The building did not look dangerous from the outside. Glass, steel, clean lines, a symbol of success for those who did not know better. But inside, no one made a decision without fear. The elevator reached the top floor without a sound. 2 security guards stood motionless at the entrance of the executive level, not because they were told to stand still, but because moving at the wrong time had once cost someone their job in a way no one spoke about again. At the center of the floor was a long conference room with a table carved from dark wood. No papers were ever left overnight. No personal objects were allowed. Even time seemed temporary here, and at the head of that table he sat. He did not arrive late. He did not arrive early. He arrived exactly when everything was ready for him. No one greeted him with warmth. No one tried to impress him anymore. That phase of survival had ended years ago. What remained was discipline. He opened a file in front of him, read 1 page, closed it. A decision had already been made. Across the table, executives waited for permission to speak. None of them did. One man shifted slightly in his chair, then stopped himself mid-movement when he realized it. The smallest mistake in this room was not corrected. It was remembered. The man at the head of the table did not raise his voice. He rarely did. "Report," he said. Only one voice answered. Careful, controlled, prepared. Numbers were spoken, assets, losses, territories disguised as markets. He listened without expression, but silence did not mean absence. It meant calculation, meant control. It meant he had already seen 5 outcomes ahead of what they were saying. When the report ended, no one moved. They waited for approval that felt more like survival than permission. He closed the folder. "Fix it," he said. 2 words, no explanation, no discussion. The man who had spoken nodded immediately, as if relief and fear were the same emotion. The meeting ended without dismissal, without thanks, without acknowledgement that anything had changed, because nothing ever changed here unless he allowed it. When the others left, the room emptied slowly, carefully, like stepping away from something alive. Only one person remained, a younger assistant at the far corner, adjusting documents that did not need adjusting. His hands were slightly unsteady. He had not yet learned that perfection here was not about accuracy. It was about invisibility. The billionaire did not look at him. Instead, his gaze drifted toward the glass wall. The city stretched beyond it like a living organism. Cars moved like blood through veins. Buildings rose like silent witnesses. Everything below looked small. Everything above him was quiet. And yet he did not feel above anything. He never did. There was a time when control had felt like power. Now it felt like distance, a separation from something he could not name without. Tightening something inside his chest. His phone lit up once on the table, no name displayed. Only a number. He did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice changed slightly, not warmer, not softer, just more precise. Yes. A pause. Then he ended the call. No reaction followed. No visible frustration, no satisfaction, only stillness. But in that stillness was memory, not of money, not of war, but of a moment years ago when trust had been spoken and broken in the same breath. A moment that did not end loudly, but quietly, which made it worse. He stood, finally. The room reacted to his movement, even though no one was inside it anymore. That was how control worked here, not through presence, but through consequence. As he walked toward the glass, his reflection appeared faintly over the city below. A man built from discipline, from silence, from decisions no one questioned twice. And yet behind that reflection, something unresolved remained, something no empire had ever been able to secure. He adjusted his cuff without looking at it, then turned away from the window. Outside, the city continued to move. Inside, nothing in him had moved for a long time. And that was exactly how everyone preferred it, because a man like him was safest when he felt nothing, or so they believed. The office was loud in a way that had nothing to do with sound. It was the kind of place where attention was currency, and she never had enough of it to matter. She stood at her desk before the day fully began, arranging files that had already been arranged twice by someone else, not because it was necessary, but because it gave her something to do while others decided whether she belonged here or not. A glass of coffee was placed on her desk without care. It tilted slightly. Some of it spilled. No one apologized. One of the senior analysts walked past her without stopping. "Clean that later," he said, not looking at her. She nodded once, no emotion on her face. No protest, only acceptance of a world that had already decided her place. Her name tag read clearly, but no one used it correctly. Sometimes they shortened it. Sometimes they ignored it completely. Most of the time she was just the assistant, not a person. A function. Across the room, laughter broke out near the meeting area. A group of executives stood around a screen, reviewing reports that would later decide budgets and people's jobs. She was not invited to that conversation. She never was, but she still noticed things. She always did. A number that didn't match yesterday's file. A signature that looked slightly rushed. A discrepancy no one else seemed to care about. She did not speak up, not because she was afraid, because she had learned that speaking too early in rooms like this made people remember you for the wrong reasons. Woman nearby glanced at her outfit and smirked. "She dresses like she still thinks effort matters here," she whispered. The comment was not meant to be heard, but it was not meant to be kind either. The woman heard it anyway. She simply adjusted the stack of papers in her arms and continued working. There was a quiet discipline in her movements, not polished, not impressive, but steady, like someone who had learned long ago that survival was not loud. A notification flashed on her screen. Meeting. Request. Executive level. Her eyes paused for half a second longer than usual. It was unusual, not impossible, just unexpected. She checked the name attached to the meeting. No explanation. No context. Only a single instruction. Bring the financial audit files. Her fingers tightened slightly on the folder. From across the room, someone noticed. "Why would they need her in that meeting?" a voice said, amused. Another answered without looking up. "Probably to carry things." Small wave of laughter followed. She did not respond. She had learned that reacting gave people ownership over your emotions, and she had already given much of herself away in other places in her life. Exactly the scheduled time. She stood. The room did not notice at first. Then it did. Small glances. Subtle pauses. The kind of attention that still did not feel like respect. She walked toward the elevator. Each step measured, not confident, not uncertain, just controlled. As the doors closed behind her, the noise of the office disappeared. Silence returned, but this silence felt different, heavier, like something had shifted without permission. Upstairs, she did not know who was waiting. She only knew one thing. People did not get called to that floor by accident, and people who went up there rarely returned to the same place they were before. The elevator numbers changed slowly. 1 floor, then another, then another, each level quieter than the last, until even the air felt different, more expensive, more controlled, more dangerous. When the doors finally opened, she stepped out without hesitation. The executive floor was still, too still, and at the far end of the corridor, behind glass doors, was a room where decisions were made that never needed approval from anyone else. She adjusted her grip on the files and walked forward, unaware that someone inside that room had already been watching her long before she arrived. Someone who never looked at people by accident. Someone who never forgot faces once he noticed them. And for reasons no one would understand yet, he had already decided she did not belong in the category everyone else had placed her in. Next chapter. The doors to the executive meeting room opened without sound. She stepped in. No one greeted her. That was normal. What was not normal was how the room reacted without reacting. A slight pause in conversation, a shift in posture, a few eyes that moved away too quickly, as if looking at her too long might be mistaken for interest. She stopped near the edge of the table, placed the files down carefully, then stepped back. She did not try to fill the silence. She did not try to prove she belonged in it. At the head of the table, he was already there, still, silent, watching, not in the way others watched her, not dismissive, not curious in a casual sense, focused, like she was a detail that did not match the rest of the system. The room continued speaking, but his attention did not leave her. She felt it, even without looking directly at him. A pressure in the air that was not spoken, but existed anyway. One of the executives cleared his throat and began presenting numbers. She remained still, hands folded, eyes lowered slightly. Professional, invisible, by design, but not to him. He turned a page in the file she had brought once, then again. A small pause. "Explain this line," he said. The voice was calm, not loud, but it cut through everything. The executive speaking stopped. Immediately, he looked down, confused. It should match last quarter's adjustment. Should, the man at the head of the table repeated quietly. That single word changed the temperature of the room. The executive swallowed. She noticed it. He finally looked at her. Not at the file. At her. A direct gaze, controlled, measuring something no one else in the room could see. "Did you prepare this?" he asked. It was not an accusation. It was not approval. It was something in between. She hesitated only a fraction. "Yes." A pause. "You verified it yourself?" "Yes." The room shifted slightly, not because of what she said, but because she said it without trying to impress him, without adding explanation, without fear showing in her voice. Another executive laughed lightly. "She's just an assistant," he said. "We can fix the file later." The comment was meant to end the moment. It did not. The man at the head of the table did not look at the executive who spoke. He kept looking at her. "Fix it," he said again. This time, the instruction was not for the room. It was directed at her. She understood immediately. She opened the file and corrected it slowly, not nervously, not performatively, just accurately. The room waited, not because they cared about her work, but because they were watching his reaction. When she finished, she placed the corrected page back, down, stepped back again. "Done," she said. One word, neutral, no pride, no expectation. Silence followed. Then he closed the file. a soft sound. But in that sound, something settled. Decision, not announced, but made. "You stay," he said. The words were simple, but the meaning was not. The executive who had dismissed her earlier frowned slightly. "Sir, she's not part of—" "Stay," he repeated. This time, no one responded, not because they agreed, but because they understood the difference between discussion and instruction. She did not react immediately. Most people would have to relief, confusion, pride, something. She gave none of it away, only a small no, as if accepting a task, not a change in status. The meeting continued, but something had already shifted. He returned to the conversation, yet his attention moved differently now, not fully away from her, not fully toward her, something in between, observing, measuring, the way a person studies a variable that does not fit the equation. When the meeting ended, people stood quickly, too quickly, as if staying. Too long might make them part of something they did not understand. She gathered her files, prepared to leave. "Wait." The voice stopped her before she reached the door. She turned slightly. He had not moved, still seated, still composed. But the room felt smaller. "Again, your name," he said. A simple question, but no one else had ever asked it in that room in that tone. "She answered quietly, clearly. He repeated it once in his mind, not aloud, then nodded slightly, as if confirming something only he had been calculating. "Tomorrow," he said, "you report directly. No explanation, no title change, no permission requested from anyone else in the room, just a shift in structure, invisible, to most irreversible in reality." She held his gaze for a moment longer than expected, then nodded again and left. Behind her, the room remained silent longer than usual, not because the meeting was important, but because something in it no longer made sense to the people who believed they controlled it. And at the head of the table, he remained seated, still, but no longer entirely unchanged. Because for the first time in a long time, something had not followed his expectation. It had interrupted it quietly, without permission. The next morning did not feel different on the surface. The building was still the same. The elevators still moved without sound. The same people still avoided eye contact in the hallways. But she felt it immediately. The space around her had changed, not physically, socially. People who used to walk past her without acknowledgement now slowed slightly when she appeared, not to greet her, not to welcome her, but to confirm something they had heard and did not fully believe, that she had been moved, not promoted, not removed, repositioned. She reached her desk and found it already cleared. Her things had been organized neatly, too neatly, like someone had decided order mattered more than her presence. A note sat on top of the files, no signature, only one instruction. "Report to executive floor, permanent." She stared at it for a moment, then placed it back down. No reaction, but her breathing changed, slightly, controlled, measured, like she was adjusting to a new weight she did not ask for. Below, the office continued, but she was no longer part of its rhythm. When she arrived at the executive floor, the atmosphere did not greet her. It observed her. Doors opened automatically now, not because she was expected, but because she was recognized. Inside the main corridor, two senior assistants exchanged a glance as she passed. One of them whispered, "So it's true." The other did not respond. They did not need to. She stopped outside a closed office. The door was different from the others, thicker, quieter, unmarked. Before she could knock, it opened. He was already there, not sitting, standing, as if he had been waiting without moving for longer than anyone would consider normal. There was no greeting, no acknowledgement of transition, only presence. "Sit," he said. She did, not immediately, but without hesitation. A chair was already placed, opposite his desk, perfect alignment, as if her position had been decided before she entered the room. He placed a thin folder between them, did not slide it, did not push it, just placed. "It's a red piece." She opened it. Inside were financial structures, offshore accounts, movement patterns of capital that did not belong to any publicly declared business unit. Nothing illegal was written outright, but nothing was innocent either. She understood that immediately, not because she was told, but because she had learned how silence in documents spoke louder than text. She looked up once, only briefly. He was watching her reaction, not her face, her decision-making. "What is this?" she asked. A simple question, not fear, not accusation, clarity. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he said, "Tell me what you see." A test, not of intelligence, of perception. She looked back down, took her time, no rush, no performance. When she spoke again, her voice remained steady. "This structure is stable," she said, "but it is intentionally fragmented. Too many layers, too many exits. It's designed to disappear under pressure." Silence followed. Not empty silence, evaluating silence. She continued, "But one layer is exposed. If someone knows where to look, it collapses in sequence." His expression did not change, but something in the air tightened. Not danger. Control. Recalibration. "You found it quickly," he said. "I did not find it quickly," she replied. "It is visible, just ignored." That sentence stayed in the room longer than anything else. Ignored. He leaned back slightly. A minimal movement, but it shifted the balance of the conversation. "Most people do not see what is obvious," he said. "Most people are not allowed to," she answered. A pause, not confrontation, recognition. He studied her for a long moment. The kind of silence that did not ask questions, but collected answers. Then he closed the folder. Not because it was finished, but because it was enough for now. "You will review all incoming reports from now on," he said. It was not a request, not a suggestion. Structural change. She did not respond immediately, not because she disagreed, because she understood what it meant. More visibility, more responsibility, more exposure. And in a world like his, exposure was never neutral. "Why me?" she asked finally. For the first time, something unplanned entered the room. He did not answer quickly. When he did, it was not what anyone else would expect. "Because you do not adjust your answers to survive the room," he said. She held his gaze. For a brief moment, neither of them moved. Outside the glass walls, the city continued as if nothing had changed. Inside, something had already begun to reorganize itself quietly, not affection, not trust. Something more dangerous than both. A tension that could not be reversed. He stood. The meeting was over, without being declared. As she reached the door, he spoke again, not loudly, not urgently, just enough to stop her. "Do not mistake this for safety," he said. She turned slightly. He was still looking at the space she had just occupied, not at her, but at what her presence had already begun to alter, and for the first time The control in the room did not feel entirely like it belonged to him alone. That night, the building was quieter than usual. Not empty, just restrained. Like everything inside it had learned to lower its voice when he was present. He remained in his office long after everyone had left. No meetings, no calls, only documents that did not require reading so much as confirmation. But his attention drifted, not often, not fully. Only in small interruptions he did not acknowledge. A pause between decisions. A moment longer than necessary before signing a file. A stillness that did not belong to efficiency. He noticed it and ignored it. At least at first. On the desk beside him was the same folder she had worked on earlier. It had not been moved. Not because it was important, because he had not allowed it to be removed. He opened it again. Not to review the content, but to recheck something he could not name. Her reasoning. The way she saw structure without being told what structure was supposed to look like. Most people needed direction. She did not. Most people adapted to power. She did not adjust herself to it. That difference should not have mattered, but it did. He closed the folder. Leaning back slightly, he looked out through the glass wall. The city was still awake below, but it felt distant tonight, more than usual. A notification appeared on his screen, a scheduled meeting request for the next day. He did not open it. Instead, he turned the screen off. Silence returned. But this silence was no longer empty. It carried something he had spent years avoiding noticing. Memory. It did not arrive as a clear image. It came as fragments. A previous office, a different table, a decision he had trusted someone else to make, a signature placed too easily, and what followed after that trust. Not betrayal in the dramatic sense. No shouting, no confrontation. Just erosion, slow, precise, irreversible. That was the moment he learned something simple. People did not fail all at once. They failed where they were comfortable. His jaw tightened slightly. A controlled reaction, but it was still a reaction. A knock came at the door. Once. Then silence. He did not answer immediately. The second knock did not come, because whoever stood outside already understood the answer. He stood and opened the door. A security chief waited. "Sir," the man said carefully, "there's movement in the southern accounts again." He nodded once. "Contain it." The man hesitated. "It is already contained on paper, but the pattern is returning." That word mattered. Returning. He stepped out of the office, not hurried, not alarmed, just precise. As they walked, the building felt different again. Not unsafe, not unstable, just active in ways most people could not see. He listened to reports without interruption, numbers, transfers, signals, all of it controlled, all of it predictable. Except one detail that kept resurfacing, a correction pattern. Subtle, too clean, too accurate. Like someone was fixing things without asking permission. He stopped walking. The security chief stopped with him. "What department?" he asked. The man checked his device. "Executive Floor Audit Review." A pause, then another. "Her work," the chief added carefully. He did not respond immediately. But the air around him changed. Not anger, not approval. Something sharper. Awareness. He turned slightly and walked back toward his office. Faster than before. Inside, he closed the door. Not fully, but enough. He opened the folder again. This time not for structure, for pattern recognition. And for the first time, he saw something he had missed before. Not an error, not a correction. A consistency, a mind that did not just follow systems, but quietly refined them, without permission, without fear, without asking whether it was allowed. He leaned back slowly. His expression remained controlled. But something inside that control shifted, not breaking, not softening, repositioning. Because in his world, people either obeyed systems or became systems others could not ignore. A memory surfaced again, this time clearer, not of betrayal, but of someone else who once saw things too clearly, and how quickly they were removed from proximity. His hand rested on the edge of the desk, still, measured, but no longer untouched by thought. Outside, the city continued as if nothing had changed. Inside, for the first time in a long time, he did not fully trust his own distance anymore. Not because he was losing control, but because something in his environment had started thinking like control itself. And it was not him.